Hey guys, did you ever want to try something that is just distinctively Florida? Or what about the taste of Florida, like the true essence of Florida in a drink? Then you need to try black coral rum. It's like capturing the Sunshine State in a glass. But black coral rum just isn't any rum. It's not your average rum. It's actually a celebration of Florida's vibrant culture and history. So with each sip, you're going to be transported back to orange groves, swaying palm trees, and it's going to be as smooth as the sand beneath your feet, whether you're drinking the white rum, the spiced rum, or the black rum. But what really makes this rum special? That's the dedication of the locals who craft it. It's made by those who share a deep love of Florida and only use in Florida ingredients. So, if you're looking for something that is distinctly Florida, then look no further than black coral rum. Where do you find black coral rum, you ask? You're going to find it at their distillery in West Palm Beach. Their distillery is Steel Tie Spirits. Can't make it to West Palm? That's okay. Check out their website, steeltiespirits.com. And trust me, you're going to sip on this and you're going to think nothing but Florida. Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. I hope everybody's doing okay. I know the bad storms came through Florida the past few days, and it's been a little rough. 3 tornadoes, Dunedin, Palm Coast, and Crystal River. Oh, tornadoes happen in Florida, but I don't know, those were some bad storms. So I hope everybody's doing okay. If you need assistance, reach out. I'll see what I can find. I know the Red Cross is definitely helping. So I just hope everybody's doing okay. I'm glad nobody got really seriously hurt in those. That's kind of crazy. Usually in this time of the year, we're talking about hurricanes, not tornadoes. Or if it is a tornado, it was connected to a hurricane. So I feel for you guys that were affected. Shout out to everybody who interacts with the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube pages. You guys are simply awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody who's saying hi. I hope you guys have been enjoying the past few spooky episodes. That's really what the theme for October is for the podcast. But yeah, thanks for interacting, guys. As always, I couldn't have this podcast without you guys, so I always want to say thank you. I love hearing from you guys. It's always nice to talk to you guys. So if you ever just want to say hi, that's cool. If you have a suggestion, please reach out. And please, as always, share those memes on the Facebook group. It's hilarious. I love seeing those because there's no shortage of weird things in Florida, as we all know. So today we're actually going to talk about when I first heard about this person, I thought that this was not real. I thought that this was one of those Florida man stories or like a myth or a legend. But no, this is a real person. John Brennan Crutchley. John Brennan Crutchley was known as the vampire rapist. I heard about this and I thought there's no way this is real. I mean, this is one of those Florida myths. This is something that was made up. There's no way this person truly existed. Well, he did. John Brennan Crutchley is a possible serial killer who is suspected of murdering up to 30 women, but was never tried for nor convicted of any of these murders. So, yeah. But why is he called the vampire rapist? Well, we'll get there. First, let's talk about who this man is. John Crutchley was actually born in Clarksburg, West Virginia. He was born on October 1st, 1946. He was the youngest of 3 kids. His parents were, normal people. Just everyday, middle-class, working people. And when John was born, his mom was a little bit, they had lost their oldest child. And they had lost their oldest child about a year before John was born. And so his mother was very, very disappointed because she wanted him to be another girl. His oldest sibling was a sister. She had died during emergency surgery. And so when John was born, his mom was upset that he didn't replace the other daughter. She wanted another daughter, and so she just began dressing him as a girl for the first 6 years of his life. He was forced to wear a dress, and he would be beaten if he didn't want to wear the dress. If he took the dress off, or if he said he didn't want to wear the dress, or talk back. He did not have the greatest childhood. He really didn't, and he was actually a friendless child. He really just preferred to spend his time doing his own thing, usually messing with electronic gadgets. He really liked electronics, and he did have a penchant for it, and he actually ended up earning money when he was younger as a radio repairman. We'll say repairman, but he used to repair radios and stereos, and he would rebuild them and repair them, and so he was very smart. He ended up graduating from high school, and he actually ended up with a degree in physics from Defiance College in Ohio. He even earned a master's of engineering from George Washington University. So this man was very, very smart, but he had a very rough childhood. He actually married his first wife in 1969, and this is while he was still in school. So he didn't have the greatest marriage either. Family life was just not for this man. He ended basically his marriage when he decided to move to Indiana and work for Delco Electronics. He just didn't take his wife with him. It wasn't for him, I guess. So he moved to Indiana to work for Delco, and he was responsible for the installation of the new security system. And he worked there as a systems engineer, electrical systems engineer, for a very long time. But he did not stay at Delco because he was suspected of stealing a lot of materials, because plant security started looking into why materials were going missing, and so Crutchley just left. I mean, it kind of looks suspicious, kind of looks like he did it, but yeah. So he left Delco, and he moved from Kokomo, Indiana to Fairfax, Virginia. And this is somewhere in the mid-70s. He also remarried. He ended up working for several high-tech firms in D.C., none of which I've ever heard of, but apparently these are some really high-tech firms. I'm not even going to bother you with the boring details. But, so Crutchley's in D.C., and eventually Crutchley gets the bug to move to Florida, I guess kind of like everybody else. So he ended up working for the Harris Corporation in Palm Bay. Palm Bay is a city just south of Melbourne in Brevard County. And so Crutchley was living in Palm Bay, and that's really when he kind of got to be a little suspicious. So Crutchley was actually found to be in possession of a great deal of high classified information with naval weaponry and communications. He was actually looked at by the FBI, the CIA, the Naval Intelligence, and was considered possibly as a spy at one point. They never actually called him a spy, but there was a great deal of investigation into this man. He seems just kind of like he just seems kind of like just a very weird individual. But it doesn't help that Crutchley's employer, the Harris Corporation, was involved with NASA research because, Palm Bay is just a very short drive from Cape Canaveral, and most of the higher agencies around the area do actually work with NASA. There's a lot of people that work with NASA that are civilian or third party that people don't realize, and this is just one of those corporations. He also worked with naval contractors and subcontractors, and due to the nature of his work, he had top secret security clearances. The Pentagon gave him top secret classified documents to deal with his work. So it's not surprising that the FBI looked into him and the Naval Intelligence, thinking that this man might have been a spy. With all the top secret clearance he had, I don't see how that's like a far stretch. But we're not here to talk about his possible espionage case. We're here to talk about the worst things he did in life. So, how did they suspect this man became the vampire rapist? Well, on the evening of November 22nd, 1985, in Malabar, Florida, they discovered Laura Murphy. She was nude, she was handcuffed, both feet and ankles, and found crawling along the side of the road. She had passed several trucks before a motorist actually stopped to help her. She begged the motorist not to take her back to that house. And when he asked where, she told him to remember a certain house. He noted the location, took her home, and then the police and ambulances were called. When the police and finally got to talk to this girl, and she was already at the hospital had by then determined that she was missing between 40 and 45% of her blood. She had ligature marks around her neck, and she reported that she had been hitchhiking the day before on November 21st, and that Crutchley had picked her up and was willing to take her where she needed to go, and she was just trying to get to Melbourne. Now, Malabar to Melbourne is maybe 20 miles at most. Crutchley agreed to take her, but he had to stop at home to pick up a notebook he claimed he needed for work. Once he got in the driveway, he invited her in, but she refused. And at that point, he tied a ligature around her neck, choked her into unconsciousness, and dragged her into his house. Okay, now here's my question. I know that I've lived in neighborhoods where you have some nosy neighbors. How did nobody see this? Like, dude, like, are people just more nosy these days? Like, how did nobody see this man dragging this girl into his house? This guy, just judging by the pictures of this guy didn't really look like he worked out a bunch. So it's not like he was going to pick her up and carry her, you know? So that's just my question on that one. Sorry. But he proceeded to bring her inside and strap her to the counter in his kitchen. This man is very deranged, so this is your warning now. This is not going to be pleasant to hear. If you need to turn the podcast off at this point, please do so. Murphy then awoke and found out she was tied to a kitchen countertop and couldn't move her arms and her legs. A video camera had been set up with lights, and presumably this man wanted to rewatch this footage later. So, not only is this guy he's just sick and twisted. Crutchley raped her and then inserted needles into her arm and wrist to extract blood and began to drink it in front of her, telling her that he was a vampire. Afterwards, he handcuffed her and put her in the bathtub to return later to repeat the same process he had already done. The following morning, after the third round, he handcuffed her and left her in the bathroom, saying he would be back later, and that if she tried to escape in the interim, his brother would come and kill her. Crutchley left the house, and she was able to push out of the bathroom window and crawl down the road. So go, girl. You made it. A hematologist at the hospital later stated that she would have died of blood loss within 12 hours if she had not been able to get help. So she was very, very drained, very low, almost to the point of just death. Now, Murphy was initially too traumatized to file charges against Crutchley, but a rape counselor eventually persuaded her otherwise to do so, and explaining that if he was found guilty, it would stop him from hurting other victims. A search warrant was served on Crutchley, whose wife and child were away for Thanksgiving holiday visiting relatives in Maryland. So this man did this when his wife and children were away. So this is the epitome of having a secret life. The videotape and camera were partially erased, which according to the victim would have otherwise contained footage of her rape and the extraction of her blood. Crutchley was arrested during the search, which actually took place at 2:30 a.m. Photographs of the house were taken at the time of the first search showed, among other things, stacks of credit cards several inches thick. A later search did not turn up these credit cards, nor a collection of women necklaces and multiple locks of hair concealed in a closet, which had been noted in the first search but not confiscated. Okay, why did you not take these things? Like, come on, cops. Why is it always cops making stupid mistakes? Like, this man would not have been able to hurt people if they had just... sorry. Okay. Fine. Fine. That was the first search. Second search, in relation to the Malabar case, police discovered 72 index cards on which Crutchley had recorded the names of multiple women and some men, along with their described sexual performances. So now this man is draining people, raping people, and making notes of how these people did. What a weirdo. So when contacted, some of the partners indicated that he had crossed the line from kinky consensual into sexual assaults that involved restraints. So obviously this man had an issue. Crutchley's wife had apparently cooperated in similar acts and spoke to the press about him. And among other remarks, she did comment on his attack on the handcuffed teen, calling it a gentle rape devoid of overt brutality. So now this woman is sticking up for this man. What a brainwash. When authorities searched Crutchley's office, they also found a number of sexually explicit photographs of unidentified women tied up and gagged, with Crutchley choking the women with his bare hands. They also found homemade sex tapes of Crutchley and his wife, as well as a dozen photographs of women in public places. On 1986, Crutchley pleaded guilty on kidnapping and rape charges in exchange for prosecution dropping the grievously bodily harm. All right, so what is grievously bodily harm? It's a severe form of battery. It is like the severest form of battery. Basically, beaten till almost dead is the best way to describe that. They dropped the grievously bodily harm in exchange for extracting the victim's blood and drug possession. So, I get that, because he almost killed her. During the sentencing phase, though, the blood issue came up nonetheless, and Crutchley claimed to have been introduced to blood drinking by a nurse as part of a sexual ritual in the 1970s. Crutchley then asked that the blood drinking not be considered in his sentencing because he didn't actually drink the blood. He claimed that it coagulated before he could drink it, and he could not get it down. There is no difference there, buddy. Crutchley's wife did not take the stand, but told reporters that her husband was not guilty. He was just a kinky sort of guy. Based on testimony at the sentencing hearing, the judge chose to exceed state guidelines and sentence him to 25 years to life in prison with 50 years of subsequent parole. So, this man was sentenced for this rape and near death, but there is many, 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 many more suspected victims. This is not the end of this man. John Crutchley did not just bother and almost kill one poor woman. There's many more. After being contacted by local authorities, FBI profiler Robert Ressler was convicted that Crutchley was probably a killer. He had definitely killed before based on his just what was found in the house, how this man talked, the way he by the time he got to this woman, he probably had perfected his technique. And he was a serial killer of the organized type. That was the official identity given to what kind of person he was. He instigated that the second search was a much wider scope than the detailed in the first. He also noted that several bodies had been found in Brevard County in previous years, and other bodies had been found where women were reported missing in Pennsylvania, where Crutchley had also lived. So this man had apparently been doing this a long time. Now, a weird thing is, though, after his guilty pleas, Crutchley bragged to a news conference that the authorities weren't able to connect him to any other crimes. There's no crimes they can link me to, he said. So obviously, he's probably killed in Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, D.C., and of course, Brevard County, where he finally got found out. So, are there other suspected victims? Absolutely, and there is a lot. Since Crutchley's second family lived in Maryland, it was possible that he murdered a 15-year-old, Kathy Lynn Beatty, and then her sister Sheila Mary Leon and Catherine Mary Leon were also convicted, or also tied to this man to possibly be his victims. For Kathy Lynn Beatty, Beatty was found in the woods next to a Kmart and a 7-Eleven in Silver Springs, Maryland. She was found on July 24th, 1975. She remained unconscious for a month before passing away as a result of her injuries. The attack on Beatty occurred 4 miles away from the abduction of the Lyon sisters, who disappeared while visiting a shopping center in Wheaton, Maryland, which is right outside of D.C. So, could have been him. There's another disappearance of a 25-year-old secretary in Fairfax, Virginia. That was Deborah Rita Fitzjohn. Crutchley was placed under close scrutiny because he was Fitzjohn's boyfriend at the time. She was last seen alive at a trailer park where he lived in Wapple Mobile Home Estates. And as a result, he was questioned about her disappearance. Crutchley then claimed that Deborah had visited him on the night before she vanished. She fell asleep in front of the television. He said that she left as soon as she woke up. Her skeletal remains were found by a hunter in October of the following year in 1979. When Crutchley was arrested, though, in November of 1985, they said that they had found business cards of the chief investigator of Fitzjohn's case among Crutchley's possessions. So that could have been him. 29-year-old Patty Lou Valensky. She was last seen by her roommate on March 15th, 1985. She had decided to hitchhike and left their residence near Mims, Florida, and she was never seen again. Crutchley was also considered a suspect in this case. At his workplace, Valansky's photo ID card was discovered. He acknowledged he had picked her up hitchhiking about 6 months before his arrest in 1985. He claimed that he ordered her out of his car after she started making obnoxious demands, and the next day he found her ID in his vehicle, took them to his office. Her body was never found. Now, he didn't just have Valansky's identification cards, though. He had a lot stashed in his desk. Nancy K. Brown's ID was found in there. She was out of Rantoul, Illinois. She disappeared while vacationing in Cocoa Beach, Florida in June of 1983. Her remains were actually discovered in Canaveral Groves on March of 1984. She had died from a blow to the head. On May 1st, 1984, boaters found a body of a female floating near the barge canal in Merritt Island. She was later identified as 16-year-old Cheryl Ann Windsor, who had been reported missing by her mother on April 7th, 1984, so they found her roughly about a month later. And her identification was also in his desk. So was 20-year-old Diana Lee Casey. Her remains were found on Merritt Island in 1984. They were skeletized, so they'd been there a while. So that's just a couple of the identifications that he had in his desk, linking him to have at least been near these women to get these identifications. 23 bone fragments were believed to be the partial remains of 2 women who were found in dense brush south of U.S. Route 1 in Malabar, Florida on January 30th, 1985. Some of the bones were actually identified as Kimberly Ann Walker. She was 21. She was out of Vero Beach, Florida. Bones from the pelvis, leg, and foot belonged to a still unidentified woman. Cause of death was never found for either of these women. Walker was last seen in June of 1984 getting into a light-colored small car at a Miko convenience store. Miko is a little tiny town off of US 1 between Palm Bay and Vero. At that time, though, Crutchley did own a beige 1982 Nissan Stanza. The decomposing and bludgeoning body of Lynn K. DeSantis, 40, was found in a ditch in Grant, Florida on November 26, 1985. Grant, Florida is just south of Malabar. She was last seen hitchhiking outside the Colonial Motel where she resided in Melbourne, Florida. Her death was also ruled a homicide. The identifications for both Walker and DeSantis were also found in Crutchley's possession. In 1995, the Naval Criminal Investigative Services began investigating Crutchley, who had access to the Norfolk Naval Air Station during the time 2 women were actually murdered at the base. Pamela Ann Kimbrough was 23. She was a Navy messenger. She disappeared from the base on March of 1982. Later, at the end of a seaplane ramp, her body was discovered floating in her submerged vehicle. Her assailant had attempted to choke her while tying her arms behind her with a clothesline. Carol Ann Molnar was a 21-year-old Navy clerk. She disappeared in February of 1983. 3 months later, at the naval base, her body was found decomposing near rocks of a seawall. She had also been choked to death. Someone was convicted for Kimbrough's death, but Molinar never figured out who did her. She's still unsolved. In 2010, kind of recent, the Brevard County Sheriff's Office released an image of a skull reconstruction based on the remains of an unidentified woman known as Brevard County Doe. Teen hunters found the decedent's remains in a dense wood off of Hollywood Boulevard in West Melbourne, Florida, in December of 1985, not far from where Crutchley lived at the time. The victim was one of 4 identified women whose bodies were discovered in the South Brevard area of 1985. So, this man obviously could have killed a lot more than just hurting the one girl. So, Riesler actually also predicted that Crutchley's 25 to life sentence would result in a release as soon as 1998. In fact, Crutchley was released 2 years earlier than that. He served 11 years of his sentence, and he was released on August 8th, 1996 from the Union Correctional Institute in Rainford, which is in Union County, Florida. He got released on good behavior. Imagine that. Officials in Bridgeport, West Virginia, where his mother lived, did not want him, nor did authorities in Malabar and Melbourne. Therefore, Crutchley was transferred to the Orlando Probation and Restitution Center, a halfway house where he would undergo counseling and pay restitution even while serving his 50 years of parole. So they were going to get this man for basically anything and everything he had. And I kind of don't think I blame them. Like, sounds like a very... He's got some issues. Of course, as soon as he got out, less than a day later, he was arrested for violating his parole for testing positive for marijuana. Even though he denied smoking it, saying inmates blew smoke in his face, the prosecutors in a subsequent trial showed him confessing to corrections inspector that he smoked it because he was nervous about his impending release and he was aware of the relaxing effects of cannabis. The violation of his parole resulted in sentence of life imprisonment to be imposed on January 31st, 1997. That is under the 3 strikes law, and this was his third conviction. The first 2 were for the kidnapping and rape of the Malabar hitchhiker. So basically, his third strike was just getting high. But it kept him off the streets. He didn't end up in Orlando, and probably was unable to hurt anybody else. So Crutchley was placed in solitary confinement when it was discovered that he had 13 body piercings on his genitals. 13. And he got them done in prison. And this was obviously a violation of prison rules. This man had some issues. On March 30th, 2002, though, Crutchley died in prison. Correction officials reported on April 2nd, 2002, that he'd been found dead in his cell at the Hardy Correctional Institution with a bag over his head. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Subsequent reporting around August 1st from 2003, Crutchley died of autoerotic asphyxiation. So basically, he was doing things with a paper bag over his head, or a plastic bag over his head, and, Now, he is known as the vampire rapist because of the Malabar hitchhiker, because he admitted to drinking blood. He admitted to wanting to drink blood to help satisfy his sexual needs. That is how he got the name of the vampire rapist. Now, Crutchley's not completely gone. I mean, there's still people that actually talk about this man. He possibly had anywhere up to 10 victims, and he murdered anywhere from 1977 to 1985. So he kind of had a long span of killing, and I mean, apparently he hit it really, really well. He is just a, I don't know what, I mean, there's some weird people out there, and there's some serial killers out there, and when it crosses that line, you're just not really sure what else to say about this person. Now, as recently as October 30th of 2010, the ID Discovery, or Investigation Discovery, broadcasted a 20-minute summary on the Brevard County incident, which led to Crutchley's incarceration. So they talked about the Malabar kidnapper. And an episode of American Occult includes interviews with the vampirism sociologist Catherine Ramsland, as well as Brevard County investigators. The episode also included archival video of Crutchley, including his declaration that the attribution of vampirism is pointless, declaring that it's all about the label of the big V, and the big V is empty, and that's not me. Professor Ramsland also noted that Crutchley, that there was nothing at all about him which would send danger signals to potential victims, and in fact, there was nothing about him that he would be anything but an engineer. So, Crutchley was one of those people that I almost want to say he was Ted Bundy-like. He was so charming and he was so nice that nobody got, like, red flags about this guy. Like, immediate red flags that you need to run. That being said, though, looking at his mugshot, I'm getting red flags just from his mugshot, personally. But yeah, so John Brennan Crutchley is the vampire rapist, and he was suspected of killing 10, 15, who knows how many people. Some probably still haven't been found. But yeah, so I guess I guess there's a reason they say don't pick up hitchhikers, or if you're hitchhiking, don't take rides from strangers. And I guess this man is part of the reason why. I'm not going to talk about Florida Man today. I think we just talked about a pretty good Florida man. Yeah. So keep a lookout for the polls and fun little questions on Instagram each Wednesday. I'm trying to keep it on Wednesday. So far, I've done pretty good. If you guys need anything, just reach out. If you want to say hi, if you have suggestions for the podcast, I really would appreciate it. I love hearing from you guys. You guys are amazing. I hope you have maybe not enjoyed, but found it interesting about the dark side of Florida today. Thanks for listening, guys, and I'll be back next week, and we will do another spooky episode in October. Hope you guys have a great week. Don't forget to wear your sunscreen, even if it is not 90 outside. It's still sunny. It's still warm. It can still hurt you. Don't forget to drink water. Please, please, please be nice to one another. There is so much going on in the world right now that we don't need another asshole. So please be nice. And as always, guys, that's your daily dose of sunshine.